Vince, thanks for coming.
Yeah, great to be here.
Excited.
Of course.
First time we met in person.
Exciting.
Glad to have you in studio, and wanted to talk today about, we'll talk about some gold stuff, but I just wanted to talk about your channel.
Yeah, sure.
How did you think, like when you started posting, you're like, I can do what those guys can do? Was it like pretty obvious that you could do this, or was it, do you think it was, you just kind of just started posting and just want to see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not to sound arrogant, but I always kind of thought like, no, you're going to do that. You're going to be up there. You know, there's never really doubt in my mind, I guess, that I would, and I still think I'm ascending and rising, but I've never had like a doubt that I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? So it's, I guess, and I think self-belief's always been important, because a lot of people will casually start content and just think, which is fine. I think it's fine, but they'll start all as a hobby, just see where it goes, right? But I think when you're really driven and you deep down believe that this is what you're going to do, it kind of adds, I guess, to the work and, you know.
Yeah. The confidence is big,
Yeah.
and I think the way that you speak on camera, you show a strong belief in what you're talking about, and then also just on the technical side, like the editing and your ability to do all those things, which for a lot of influencers is a hindrance.
Yeah.
That's like they can't even get past.
Right.
And it's just you, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
You just cut it up, and then you're just learning, and
Yeah, pretty much.
just kind of seeing.
Right.
Was there a video that took off that you're like, I got to replicate that, or like what happens when something goes viral? Like what goes on in your head from that point when you see that happening?
So, you know, it's an attention economy. So I always, when something goes viral, I think, okay, I have attention now you got to keep it.
Oh,
right.
okay.
So then I'll try to throw out, if something's popping off, my next few videos, my next stuff. I want to be very active and really retain attention. Because think about this too, if you see someone, you know, you might see someone once in a really good video that everyone is seeing, be like, oh, that's cool, right? Maybe you go check them out. But you don't hear from them for, you know how attention spans are, 1 or 2 weeks. You forget who they even
They're
are.
gone.
Yeah,
They're
basically.
gone. Interesting.
So,
yeah.
and it's definitely a challenge. It's not the easiest thing, but really once you grab attention, you want to keep attention.
Right.
And that's always the challenge.
So what for you? What was? When is it viral? Like, what is viral for you? Like how do you know something's gone? Is there a certain amount of views, or is people like, what's happening? How can you decide? You know, do you go from a few thousand views to whatever the views are? How does that translate?
Yeah, I mean, I usually say if something has over 1 million views, it's, I guess, semi-viral. But for me,
by the way, that's funny. 1 million is only semi-viral. That doesn't mean.
I mean, in terms of like shorts and YouTube and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So it's a view is a little bit less. But really, when people are talking about it, and high-profile people are talking about it, or other people in the sphere are talking about it, that's when I really say that like a video is viral.
So
right?
they see it and then they comment.
Right,
on
not
it.
just numbers, but it starts conversation. That's more so honestly how I measure it these days.
Yeah.
Because when I was younger, it was kind of an ego thing. Oh, I got this many views, right? But then after that, you realize, what really matters is influence and conversation. And so I kind of judge now on terms of how much conversation is something starting from, and from who, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So you were on a talk show, a liberal. Is this kind of how you blew it, the liberal talk show?
It was Vice, yeah, the panel. Yeah,
oh, Vice.
Panel,
oh,
yeah,
that's sort of,
right,
that was the thing that sort of,
right.
But you already had the channel before that? Or?
Yeah. But that was kind of a blow-up moment, right? But I was already doing stuff. Yeah.
And you just went on there and they just threw out some, they thought softball questions or whatever, however they thought it, and you just kind of attacked it.
Right. Well, they kind of sat me in the group of liberals, and I think they thought that it was just going to be a setup to make the conservatives look bad.
Sure.
But I held my own and kind of flipped it on their head, I guess. Right. Yeah.
They weren't expecting that.
No, they were not.
That must have felt great.
They were not. Yeah. They really did.
And were you nervous going into that, or you just felt confident, like, hey, I can sort of, wherever it's going to go, I got a few things I can say. I'm ready to rock. Or
yeah, I mean, you get a little bit of adrenaline, but I would say it was never really a nerves thing, because I just figured you've done this before.
Right.
It's a different stage, but you've done this before.
Right.
It's nothing new. Nothing new. Right. Yeah.
That's cool. So now you got the channel. Things are starting to go viral. You get some people. So who was the first name that mentioned your video that you were like, oh wow, I can't believe I got into this conversation?
Well, it was because I knew, so initially when it happened, I got like a boost from it. You know, I got views. Some people were talking
The
about
Vice
it.
show you're talking
right.
about? Yeah.
But then there's like the second wave in February. It just went crazy on Twitter out of basically nowhere. And when I saw like Matt Walsh and all the Daily Wire people talking about it, and it was on Newsmax, I was like, wow. Because I really was not expecting that. I was just expecting it would get a couple 100,000 views and kind of give me a boost. But that kind of came out of left field, and that was surprising to me.
And it's weird how sometimes, like you said, like where did it come from again?
It's just
like,
a total accident, yeah.
Yeah, like someone was looking. Maybe it was a day that they were looking for some content,
right?
And they sort of because like a lot of these shows, I mean producing content so much. There's just days where there's not a ton of stuff, and so maybe they had it like kind of in the back room, and they're like, we're gonna bring Vince out. We got something good, and then it sort of took off.
Sure.
And that's really cool. How'd you get invited on that Vice show?
They just reached out to me. I think through social media. They were looking for conservative Asians. That was the theme of it. So,
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you just
kind of found me.
And you were like, I'm coming.
Yeah.
where did they shoot that?
New York City.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they took us all the way up to New York, and
you're like free flight.
Right,
I'll stay in New York, eat some good hot dogs.
I have nothing bad to say about the way they treated me.
Yeah.
This is a nice hotel. You got food.
Well, it sounds like it did what you wanted, and let's be honest, that's probably what they wanted too. They wanted publicity.
I think they just wanted content deep down.
Right.
They have a bias, but at the end of the day, they wanted content, and that was my big thing, is because I knew they were going to try to cut me up badly. But I was also, my whole thing was, you have to basically dominate the whole conversation to where if they cut you out, they cut out all the content, right? Which in the end, honestly, they didn't really cut me up that badly, because what would you have done? You'd have no panel,
right?
And you wouldn't have an interesting panel, to say the least, right? So, yeah.
Right. So you knew, you're like, I got to get in strong.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if I say anything that's kind of weak or isn't good, they'll just use that.
Right.
That's a great strategy. That's great. Well, I guess Vice probably won't be having you back on, because I think they're
bankrupt.
They're filed for bankruptcy. So you were the only one wearing a suit on the panel.
Yeah.
Is that right? No one else decided.
Well, that was really a calculated thing, because I knew there would be a bunch of people dressed like hippies in there. So I figured it would it would make it more memorable,
right?
Because I stand out from the crowd,
right?
And then B, there's a essence of credibility, right? Because everyone else is dressed like a teenager, so I was like, you have to dress like a professional, and then I think people kind of took that from the.
Well, and like if it was an actual, let's say like a debate, like a debate team, people would be dressed up, right. So I think
one of the biggest news outlets in the world, right? So
yeah, I mean, exactly. You think that you put something nice on to sort of. And off air before we started this, obviously you and I were matching, so I had to change shirts. Speaking of being well dressed, so Vice takes off. Your things are looking good. You go back. You're in college, and you just go back to posting, and you're going to classes, and then in between classes, you're shooting content, doing this. And how many hours a day are you? I'm not going to ask how many hours you're studying, because I feel like that's not a good question. 10 minutes of studying, and then the rest is no. I'm not going to put you on the spot like that. His teachers are like, don't tell your mom. Exactly. How many hours are you shooting? Not just shooting content, but like how many hours is the show of your day? Because obviously shooting's just one part of it. Right?
Yeah, so I do the show for about an hour and a half. And then it probably takes like an hour these days to prep. So that's like 2.5 hours. And then in terms of shooting separate videos, editing, all of that, probably 4 or 5. It just depends on the day sometimes,
So total.
And it's not always a straight line of work. Like I'll just kind of sit around, and then if something happens, okay, now let's do this. So it's a very like sporadic day. It's no 1 hour I do this or that. It's
you don't shoot at the same time every day. Some days you'll shoot, and then or maybe something really interesting. The news pops up. You're like, I gotta get this going on now.
Yeah.
And then what's happening in? I mean, with your friends, you know, you're in college and they like, hey, let's go shoot some hoops or let's go do this. And you're like, hey, I don't know if you're watching the news, but there's something kind of big that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely hurts the social life sometimes. I have the weekends. I don't stream on the weekends. So I try to keep them semi-open for myself.
But during the week,
yeah,
you're like, sorry, I can't go to that party.
I can't do anything.
I can't do it. I'm shooting content. I gotta be. And what do your peers think of this? Like, what have like on both sides? Like, you know, you're on campus. You know, people recognize you. What's the feedback from the people around you?
Well, I mean, all my friends are, you know, from conservative clubs and stuff on campus. So obviously, like, my friend circle's very, you know, about it. But what I would say is, this is very interesting. In colleges in Florida, you know, a lot of the liberals are a lot less aggressive than they are, even in some other red states. And there's just this general attitude. I guess people are more laid back. I think there's also an attitude that they kind of know they don't really have the power to just do whatever they want, which sometimes happens even in these red states on campuses. Because for the most part, you know, you get your crazies, but for the most part, they're actually nice. There's sort of this understanding, I guess, that conservatives exist and you're not doing anything about their existence. I think a lot of other places, like UCLA, for instance, they feel they have the overwhelming 99%, and so they can just drive you off, right? And in Florida, there's just not really that attitude. People are actually pretty laid back about
So it feels a little bit like you can have a political discussion.
Absolutely,
in a normal, which is basically what everybody
and
wants.
a lot of times, if you're tabling for Turning Point or college Republicans or something, liberals will just see it and walk by. They're not going to stop and make a scene because, you know, it's just not part of the culture at our school, I guess. Yeah, people are just relaxed.
And are people like, you know, because there's some people that, you know, are just enjoying college and you're, you know, enjoying college, but really, I mean, you have a full-time gig, right? I mean, is there other people in college? Is college, you know, it's been years since I was in college, you know, many years. And is it, and when I was going, it was like, you know, maybe somebody had a part-time job, but no one really was like going to college and then had a full-time gig. It's this sort of, is this a new thing that's happening, or are you sort of unique in the college sphere where you really have a full-time, you're building your business and your career before you finish? I feel like a lot of times what they used to do is people would wait and they go, okay, I'm going to get out there now and try to figure out my life.
No, I would say I'm probably pretty unique. I think for the most part, it's probably worse even than when you were in school, where people are majoring in something but they have no idea what they plan to do. And, you know, a lot of times they'll move back with their parents after college for like 2 to 3 years and just have nothing going on, and, you know, what was the degree even for? Right. So I think it's still the same. It's probably much worse now because I think the value of some of these degrees is just getting worse and worse, obviously.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. I talk about it a lot. It's hard to monetize, to look at the debt potential to what you could potentially earn. You know, if you're coming out of college making 50 to 70,000, but you're 150 or 200,000, let's say, minimum in debt. It's going to take a long time to pay that back, and will you make substantially more? That's the big question. I mean, that was the whole thing before. Is like, you get the degree, you'll make 10, 15, 20%, 30% more over your life. And I think, you know, maybe it's a little bit harder to argue that now. You know, my wife's a great example. She went to Johns Hopkins, brilliant. Got a poli-sci degree, and ended up in the insurance business. You know, so nothing to do. The degree had no, you know, and even when she started at the insurance company, she started in a, you know, really early beginning role. She didn't even get like jumped because she had this, you know, degree from a pretty good college. It didn't matter. They didn't care. You know anything about insurance? No. So she started where everybody starts. So, and I think there's a lot of careers like that where it just doesn't make a difference.
I think a lot of corporations probably have standard practices where they want to see this degree or that degree. But I think, you know, a big thing for small businesses especially to do is look for the people who have made the cost-benefit analysis. College is not smart, and they're probably more driven and kind of self-thinking. You know, you got to actually think a little bit to make that decision. So I think over the next few decades, you're probably going to see, you've kind of gone up in this point where college is super valued and everyone needs to go. I think you're going to kind of see that go down, and over time, probably businesses are going to value the degree less, you know, and more of the experience and all that for sure.
Yeah, I think we're seeing it already happen. So you're running your own show. You're running on your own. You're doing your own thing, which I commend, by the way, which is part of the reason we wanted to partner with you kind of early on. Is I just think to someone that's driven, I want to be, connected to that. That's part of our noble goal in my businesses is that you find people that are exceptional, you find great talent, and you want to be around that talent. And whether someone's working in my company or any, that's the kind of people you want to be around. And I think that's why we, wanted to partner with you. Do you think you can only go so far on your own? Do you think you want to hire an agent? Do you think you want to go like, to Fox News or one of those? I'm just throwing out Fox News. I'm not, is that sort of in the cards, or what's your 2 to 3 year plan?
It really just depends, I guess, where everything falls. Ideally, I'd like to stay on my own and, maybe hire an assistant or two, but I think that's the ideal thing because you don't answer to anyone. You can kind of run your own entire show. But, if the deal was right, I'd be open to partnering with networks or syndicating here or there, so it really just depends. I'd have to see the deal in front of me, and then we'll figure it out. Right?
Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, I'm not trying to negotiate any kind of deal for you, but I'm just curious about because that's typically what happens is they someone sees you out there.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure the offers are gonna start to come.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure from this show right now they're gonna see this and the op. No, I don't know if that's gonna happen, but. When in terms of and I like what you're saying about keeping control. I think that's what it comes down to, right? Like you get to dictate your own content and how the content's distributed and what your voice is. Once you go to a network, it's a little tougher, right? And I'm sure there's people that have that authority on what they're saying. But a lot of times on an early deal, they don't get that type of freedom.
Although what I will say is that I think a lot of people have that perception, but at least what I've heard from the online networks. I don't know how it is on the TV. I'm sure TV is very controlled, right? But I've heard a lot from the online networks that for the most part, a lot of these creators do genuinely have a pretty large degree of just editorial control. They basically say and cover whatever they want, and I think the networks more so handle the business side of stuff, which I wouldn't have a problem with that. But
that's probably
that's the ideal, right?
Yeah, I mean, they bring you sponsors, and you're sort of you get to pick and choose, and I will say it is important to pick a good sponsor.
Absolutely.
It's you want to be careful. I don't know if you saw that Dave Ramsey thing that happened recently.
No, I haven't seen that. No.
Yeah, so he's getting sued, and I don't know, I'm not going to comment whether he knew or didn't know, but basically he's getting sued because he promoted a timeshare company that would get you out of timeshares, and turns out what it seems like is they weren't able to, and he was getting a pretty significant amount of money to promote this company.
Wow.
And now he's getting wrapped up into I think it's a $150 million lawsuit.
Yeah, $150 million.
He's getting sued for $150 million because he was taking commissions, and there's some other things that happened, but they're wrapping it up. And like I said, I don't know the context of it, but he gets wrapped up in it. It's bad for his name, and so obviously making sure you promote a product and checking them out as best as you can is important. Because I think people think, if I can take any deal because the network's going to insulate you, but you get big, like a Dave Ramsey, it doesn't matter. They're going to come after you.
Right.
And so it's a pretty massive sort of problem there. So let's talk about money in college. So you're obviously day-to-day in college. The people that you're around, they're looking to the next step in their lives. What are people saying in terms of getting out of college? Are most of the people saying I'm going to go out and get a job in this field, or are people thinking like you're thinking and I got to start my own thing? Or what's the mindset in the people that you're around? What are they sort of talking about?
Well, I notice, I don't know, around my friends, maybe this is just how I craft my friend circle, but they all know what they want to do, right? I have one friend, he plans to be a civil engineer for his dad's company, and then the other ones, a lot of them want to be lawyers, right? So a lot of them, I guess to their credit, have a life path figured out, but there's a lot that don't, obviously. There's a lot that don't. But I think, what's interesting about this, I go to public school. I feel like it's actually more so the kids who go to the private schools that don't really know what they want to do because they're just kind of caught up in the idea of this university or that university, and oftentimes it's way overpriced. So I feel like a lot of times they're the ones making the less practical decisions because sometimes in public schools I feel like they're just more figured out, well, I want to do this or that, and they have a life path. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Who knows what people are saying in a private or public? I mean, I think at the end of the day, like what it comes down to is, I guess what I'm trying to is it seemed like people at 19, 18 are like, I'm going to finish this degree and I need to get out there and start making money earlier.
Yeah, right.
Because it's harder, right? It's, and I think you deciding early. And it sort of reminds me, I had in my podcast, I had a friend of mine who owns a guitar store, and I was asking him before the interview, like, can you send me your resume? And he's like, I don't have a resume. Like, he never had he never worked. Like, he just did different, and then he built this business. You will probably not have a resume, if you think about it.
Yeah, I have a media resume. But I don't know if I have
but you won't have
resume,
you're going to be self-employed,
right?
So no one's going to ask you like, hey, what job did you do? You're going to be like, the job I did was I created content and I got out there and I had a voice, right? Which is really cool. You're studying marketing.
Yeah,
is that helping?
No.
What are they talking? Is it digital marketing? What type of marketing are you guys?
It's just generic marketing. But in their defense, I'm doing upper division starting this year, so maybe we'll have a different answer by the end. But yeah, I mean,
is it like what is marketing?
for the first so far, it's been like generic business stuff, so accounting, management stuff like that.
Right.
And it's kind of whatever, to tell you the truth.
Accounting of marketing or just...
No, my school makes you do, regardless of what business degree you get, you have to do this same core of classes.
Oh, okay.
Which a lot of marketing people at other schools make fun of me because they never had to do accounting, which is like hard, especially at my school.
But I think that's good that you're doing accounting.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think that's a positive. To be honest, I mean, like I think about me as a business owner and, learning later about, I don't know if you guys are doing P&Ls or any of that stuff, but the earlier you do that, I think it's really better to see how much money is coming in, what are the costs of things, looking at the tax obligations, your licenses. I think the earlier you can do that, it's the better, to be honest, because it's harder later.
It did teach me to do, which one, is it an income statement, balance sheet? I forget which one.
Have you done it for your business?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot which one. There's like 4 major tax papers. But
well, balance sheet, I mean, would tell you, amount coming in, any, receivables, maybe, and if you had any, you probably don't have, but like, let's just say you had a lease on an office or, all these equipment or any of that stuff. Like so it's probably pretty simple. But that being said, it's still good to sort of see those things kind of early on. Because I think that the earlier you start to learn about like output, like what's important and what monetizes, the better. So in a way, I'm sort of happy that they're having you do that accounting. For marketing, are they? So they haven't done any digital. They're not looking at like what kind of marketing are they going to talk about? Google ads or TV or. How to come up with a call to action. Is that sort of the direction they're going into?
Well, like I said, I haven't gotten into the super deep classes.
Okay.
But my understanding, a lot of it's more so just like corporate marketing strategy, more so than the specifics of stuff like Google ads. So that's the type of that more niche, specific internet stuff. My whole life, I've kind of just had to teach it myself. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Who knows?
Well, you're already doing marketing.
Right.
I mean, in a way, that's the whole thing. What would be some of your tips, Vince, that you would say for someone that wants to start a YouTube channel? What would be like the first few things to do for them? Like, how do they get started?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing there's a technical side of. Okay, I guess we'll start with like the strategic. What do you sell?
Yeah.
I would say you kind of want to identify a gap in just the market of content and say, well, I could sell this or I could sell that or what I'm really good at. You know what I mean?
What was your gap?
I didn't really think about it when I first started.
Okay.
I just see that in retrospect. But, I guess young Asian kid, something like that. A young Asian kid, very like logical, analytical kind of content, I guess that's the
That was your-
the void
the
I feel
void.
kind of, right.
You didn't see anyone else that was sort of filling that, or maybe it wasn't. It was.
It wasn't even conscious at the time, but now I kind of look back, right? Because they
Oh.
know me as the Asian guy, right?
Oh,
I'm
that's
now
interesting.
looking. I'm now looking now back, right? Because I
Right.
didn't think about any of this stuff.
You were just
when
like,
I was-
I'm conservative. I think I have a voice. I'm gonna
Right,
start
right,
a channel, and then
right.
people are like, oh, it's the conservative Asian guy.
Right,
That's what
right.
came out later. Okay, interesting.
Right,
All
but it's, you kind of want to sell a theme, like this is what people know you for, you know,
Right.
and kind of pick that, stick to that. So that's the strategic side, and then I guess on the technical side, just make sure your audio is good. That's what I would say.
The audio.
Good mic, because if you have bad audio, you can have the best content ever. And I look back now, I probably wasted about 2 years of content because that's the first thing people listen to. And think about it, you click on a YouTube video, it's echoey, you click off immediately,
Sure.
right?
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of the camera quality is not always the best.
No.
But if it sounds good, you can watch it. So that's what I say. It's a really big thing that anyone starting YouTube, make sure you have a good microphone, you know, maybe spend few hundred if you
Right.
have to.
Right.
But that is the most important thing. If you don't
think
have that, I
lighting
think.
lighting is that important?
It's secondary,
Okay,
obviously. It's
okay.
secondary.
So
It's
it'd be
not
audio
irrelevant.
and then
but
lighting.
yeah, audio. If you're starting on a budget, audio
Right.
first thing
First
you
thing,
gotta figure out.
okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was telling you, I think earlier that our first office, we were in an old building that
Yeah,
had these thin
yeah.
windows, so we'd be shooting content every time a
Right.
fire truck would come by, and it was, and it was just so we learned pretty quick that we had to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
out of
yeah.
there, and so audio, finding a niche, you know, finding a kind of, and I think that, by the way, that's when I started Noble Gold. You know, I had been in the gold business a long time, selling and sold, but you always have to find your brand.
Right.
And
Well, this is the first time with you guys I've heard of a gold IRA. Like I never really heard of that before.
right, yeah, and that's we you know obviously that's something that we've marketed and,
Right.
and sort of kind of wrapped the company around. But part of it was like early, it's like figuring out like what you do really great, and so that was, and we met with a PR firm and they sort of sat us down and they said, like we had a 4-hour meeting, like. And they keep asking questions to try to pull out who you really are, and I think that once you know really who you are, then you can build a following sort of from there, and
Yeah.
it could evolve. It
Yeah.
could evolve over time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to evolve with your channel over time, and kind of thinking about kind of who you're going after. Is your channel? I know it appeals to younger people too, but obviously you're talking about a lot of topics that are just evergreen and everyone's interested.
yeah,
Are you
yeah.
seeing an older demographic sort of tapping into your?
Oh yeah, all the time. Absolutely, yeah. And it just grows over time, and I see it's. I don't know what it is, but I'm seeing more and more older people watch. Maybe it's the beard.
It's
It's the beard.
It's a beard.
Right.
Do you read your comments?
Sometimes I don't read everyone, but I don't obsessively like see
Do you
what people are
respond
saying.
to your
but-
comments?
Here and there, I
Really?
try to do a few a day.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
kind of respond back and just
Right.
say like.
Show that I'm a real person at least, and
Yeah.
the channel's not being run by some
Some bot.
management agency.
Oh, right,
bot
right,
or
right.
something,
Got
right?
it.
Yeah. Right.
All right, great. Well, I think we're wrapped on time, but thank you so much.
Of course.
Super interesting. Check out Vince's channel. Amazing. Big star. Lucky to get him here before he blows up and forgets about us.
Never.